right. Hello. Good morning. How we doing?
Good morning.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day. There's moms in the room. We could do this. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the work. And, I got to say this out loud. This is also a complicated day, depending on your story. And if it's a complicated day, know that Jesus sees you and loves you and will sit with you in that. And so, but for those who are in the room today and our moms, we are just grateful for all the things that you do. In fact, as we start this morning, I was thinking about the idea of rest. And rest is hard. Different phases of life bring different phases of restfulness or the lack thereof. And, on Mother's Day, I think there's some moms in here that probably say, amen, yeah, rest is hard. And that's fair. That's fair. Life is busy. Life is hard, life is tiring, painful at times. There's lots of work to get done. And it's like, can we just have a day where we just slow down a little bit? And in fact, our whole series is about that, about slowing down, about noticing God and some of the marginal spaces. And, I was on Instagram a couple of months ago, and as I was doing kind of my scrolling thing and just checking out some videos, this video popped up, and I thought, you know what? Maybe this is what we need. Maybe on a bad day, we just need a little good news. And so I want to show you a quick clip, and it was geared towards moms, so I think it's pretty cool.
Take a seat. Just put those on.
Single way. The God who made the universe knows me by my name, so it's a good day.
Wow, can I give you a hug?
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need a good day, yeah? So I love that you're clapping at the random Instagram video. That's a lot, yeah! It's a good song, good album. Anyway, good. Yeah, he's a good artist. But don't you just kind of need that sometimes? Don't you just need, like, if you're walking through life and it's just like, I could just use something good today. I could just use something that kind of regrounds me and reminds me of the good things in life and a break from the chaos and maybe even a reminder that everything is going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. For the ancient Jewish people, they had a mechanism built into their lives. It was called Sabbath. And for them, Sabbath was that pause. It was that break. It was that sort of interruption from all of the things that they had been doing for the previous six days to just say, you know what? I don't have to be productive right now. One verse in Exodus reminds us of how this all comes together. Exodus 20, verse 11. Says it this way: because the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them in 6 days, but rested on the seventh day, that is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. So this is rooted in creation. It's rooted in God's kind of way of ordering the world. It was a rhythm. And if you remember the story of the early parts of the Old Testament, the Torah, what we have is a group of people who are in slavery. They're in Egypt, and what do? All 7 days, they make bricks for Pharaoh. They make bricks for perhaps pyramids. We don't know exactly what the building projects were, but each and every day they had to meet their quota. They had to meet the the expectations of slave masters, and then God liberates them and says, you are not defined by what you do. You need to pause. You need to stop. And it's hard because, in the New Testament, this idea carries over in various ways. We'll talk about that. But it's hard in a world like ours to even pause, to turn off the mental noise, to turn off the emotional just weight that we're holding. And what I want us to do today is just give it a shot. I want us to consider this idea that Sabbath cultivates restfulness by resisting restlessness. That Sabbath cultivates restfulness by resisting restlessness. And so as we kind of step into this, I give you a picture from a book that I love from John Mark Comer. It was mentioned last week when we started the series. And on this image, you'll see sort of two different lists. And it's, So restfulness looks like there's margin in our lives, slowness, quiet, deep relationships, time alone, delight, enjoyment, clarity, gratitude, contentment, trust, joy, love, peace. Working from love, work is a contribution. And the other side of this is restlessness, busyness, hurry, noise, isolation, lots of crowds, distraction, struggling with envy, confusion, greed, discontentment, worry, anger and angst, melancholy, sadness, anxiety. Working for love, like for acceptance, work as accumulation and accomplishment. Now, if we're really honest with ourselves, at any given day, any given moment, we're probably a mixture of a bunch of these things, unless maybe the Sabbath idea has really taken hold deep in our bones. And so when we talk about restfulness or restlessness, these are sort of some of the ideas I just want to keep in our minds as we talk about Sabbath today. And if you weren't here last week, this is actually part 2 of a series we're doing called Margins, and really looking at how do we step into the marginal spaces of our lives, or maybe even create marginal space where we make room for God to work. Not that God isn't working, but that we actually open ourselves up to the work God is already up to. And so last week, David was here and preached, and he talked about silence and solitude. And today, again, we're moving into Sabbath. So what does this mean? What does this look like? We're Christians. We're not Jewish. There's some things to really process out loud here. And so I want to do that for the next few moments. And this is a quote from biblical scholar Walter Brueggemann that I think is just brilliant. He said it this way, just really one line. People who keep Sabbath live all 7 days differently. People who keep Sabbath live all 7 days differently. This is rooted in his study on Sabbath in the Old Testament. And I want to just invite us to consider, is that true? Would that be possible for you, for me? And what is Sabbath? And, is Sabbath, I've already alluded to this, is it a Christian thing? Is it a Jewish thing? Is it a both-and thing? How do we wrestle with this? Well, I think if we go back to a passage we looked at about 4 weeks ago, Romans chapter 14, I think we can say with some confidence that it's not necessarily a requirement for non-Jewish followers of Jesus. Romans 14 puts the question this way, or the situation this way. Paul reminds them, welcome the person who is weak in faith, but not in order to argue about differences of opinion. Remember that conversation we had, and we had the circle diagram. And one verse here in verse 5 says this, one person considers some days to be more sacred than others, while another person considers all days to be the same. Each person must have their own convictions. And so Paul actually is speaking into this idea of a holy day, a Sabbath day, and is simply saying there's some in the community that still observe this, probably the Jewish folks in the community. And then there's probably Gentiles in the community who are like, do I have to do this? Is this part of my life? And then you add a bunch of layers. For instance, no one else in the Roman world was really doing this, and so people worked, and they worked often, and they worked daily. And to take a break from work would be pretty hard to do in that world. And so there's some tension. But what if, as we look at this idea of Sabbath, and what if it could be a practice that could bring some real value in our day, in our lives? And so Sabbath cultivates restfulness. And one big idea I want to just start with here is this, that Sabbath is a practice and a posture. It isn't a requirement. It isn't a requirement. So if you are like, oh man, here's a sermon on Sabbath, and I don't really do that, I'm going to feel bad, you're welcome. You don't have to. Okay? Can we just get that out of the way? Like all the weird things you're feeling right now, just done. Okay? We're done with that. But, yeah, you knew it, right? But what if the principle of Sabbath, the sort of paradigm of Sabbath, the vision of rest from work, what if that is actually something that carries over in ways that we're invited to? And if we think about it more as a spiritual discipline or spiritual practice and a posture through which we do all 7 days and possibly one day in particular, then maybe we can kind of step into this with curiosity together. If I can be really honest with you, Sabbath isn't something that I've practiced all my life. And during different seasons, it's a big part of it or it's not a part of it. And so we're going to kind of be curious together and try and just sort this a little bit. Is that okay? Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to really root our time in Mark chapter 2. And in Mark chapter 2, there's a story, and you probably remember these stories about Sabbath and Jesus kind of interrupting the norms, right? Because the Torah taught and teaches for Jewish folks, right? Keep the Sabbath holy, like keep the Sabbath. And it gives a bit of a description of what they mean, what God meant by that. But it's not like it's very detailed about all of the intricacies of your life, right? And so then these Torah teachers come up in the ranks called Pharisees. And one of the things that they do is they try to say, here's how God would want us to keep the Sabbath. And so they take the idea of Sabbath and they start to build some sort of policy around what it looks like to follow Jesus, or not Jesus, they weren't following Jesus, to follow God and in taking a Sabbath, right? And so there's all of these extra layers of rules, which Jesus seems to think aren't that helpful most of the time. And so we're going to kind of feel that tension in here. And the bottom line probably is for Jesus going to be something like, keep the Sabbath, but keep it in perspective, right? So let's check this out. This is verse 23 of Mark chapter 2, a story, a biography about Jesus. Here you go. Jesus went through the wheat fields on the Sabbath. As the disciples made their way, they were picking the heads of wheat. The Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why are they breaking the Sabbath law? To which Jesus is like, I don't think this is in the Torah. Like, chill out, right? So Jesus is confronted with the question about why are they breaking what we consider to be a Sabbath law? Are you following? And then, verse 25, he said to them, haven't you ever read what David did when he was in need? When he and those with him were hungry? During the time when Abiathar was high priest, David went into God's house and ate the bread of the presence, which only the priests were allowed to eat. He also gave bread to those who were with him. Then he said, the Sabbath was created for humans. Humans weren't created for the Sabbath. I want to say that again. The Sabbath was created for humans. Humans weren't created for the Sabbath. This is why the human one, or the Son of Man, is Lord even over the Sabbath. So here, Jesus says, basically, look, Sabbath is a gift. Sabbath is to give humans something they need. It's not as though humans owe anything to a day called the Sabbath. When you take the gift and you make it a law, like you have to play with this gift, you have to use this gift. If you've ever gotten a gift that you don't like, maybe you're one of two kind of people. You're the kind of person who says, I got this gift, and so I'm going to keep it for a while. That's me, because I feel real bad, right? So I'm going to keep this thing that I don't really like that much. It's going to be in my closet, often closed, right? And I'm going to keep it, and it's going to stay there. I keep the tags on it usually, right? And every couple of weeks, Lauren comes to me. She's a wonderful mom and wife, and she's amazing. But she'll come to me and be like, dude, like, why would you keep clothes you don't want? Like, that's clutter, right? Right? So maybe you're that side. You're kind of like, you don't need to keep this. The gift is for you, and if you're not going to use it, then give it to someone else who will, right? It's kind of almost that tension. Jesus is saying to these Jewish folks, like, hey, You've got to understand that the Sabbath is a gift to be used, to be utilized, to be lived into. It's not as though it's another taskmaster like you had back in Egypt. So, what do we do with that? Well, if Sabbath cultivates restfulness by resisting restlessness, Sabbath is for humans. Its original purpose was to be a gift. That's why it's there. That's why it's there in ancient Judaism. And who you become with and without pausing from work, this matters to God. God cares about who you become, and so this pattern of pause is built into the cosmos because God sees humans and values them and wants to give them something helpful. One of the things that's been helpful in my own journey, I want to make this personal today a little bit. Stopping is not something I enjoy doing very naturally. I can just keep going, right? There's always a new idea that I need to write down. There's always a new thing I need to do. There's always projects that I could be working on. And one of the things that happens some weeks, this isn't every week, but it happens sometimes, right? I try to have my sermon, this outline that I'm talking from right now, usually done by Thursday night. Technically, Friday's my day off, right? And so there are weeks where that doesn't always work out. And what I found, especially when I started back, after the pandemic and was writing a lot of talks again, I found that it was very easy to accidentally, right, let Friday get a little action on the sermon. Oh, no, I'm not quite ready. It's not quite done. Oh, it's Friday afternoon. And then, oh, no, part of Saturday, right? And so I started catching myself in this pattern of every day is somehow a work day, right? And one of the things that has been so freeing is I would say about 80% of the time or more when this situation comes up, which isn't all the time, practice I have is 6 o'clock or so. That's when Sabbath starts on Friday, and it goes 24 hours or so, right? And so I just set down the work, even if it has a lot of work to be done, and I say, Jesus, pausing here is probably more helpful for all the things you have for me on Sunday than trying to busybody my way through this thing. And I'll tell you what, it has been just that one kind of practice of just saying, this is sacred, this is a pocket of space where like, in most circumstances, I'm just going to stop. Some of us struggle with stopping, and what I've found in my own life is that there's more peace, I'm more present, I find more wholeness, I find more joy when I simply say, okay, it's okay to not keep going here. Does that make sense? And so, as we think about this idea of Sabbath, it's supposed to be a gift. It's for humans. It's not the other way around, as though we owe the Sabbath something. And it's not technically required for non-Jewish followers of Jesus, right? So what does it look like to say the paradigm or the practice of Sabbath could still have some value in various ways? Here's just a few things. What is the spiritual discipline of Sabbath? I'll have a slide here. Simply what we do is we stop. So we stop working, we stop kind of the ongoing, like, oh, I've got to remember that thing, I've got to remember that thing. And that takes time and takes discipline. We rest. We allow our whole person, mind, body, and spirit to rest in God's love. We delight. We step into activities that bring us joy and excitement and wonder with loved ones, right? Food, nature, relationships, fun, romance with the spouse, all these sorts of things can be part of what it's like to just sit with God and with those you love. And worship. In pausing, we choose to offer gratitude to God as we attune to the presence of Jesus and the voice of his Spirit. So what does it offer, right? I think you can imagine if you live a life that feels busy and full and you'd like to have a really good day once in a while, like, yeah, of course. Here's a few things that I think it offers us. The next slide here. The first thing is the spiritual discipline offers resistance. So resistance to the empire of productivity is one way I like to put that, right? This idea that you have to be productive and you have to accumulate. And by the way, our culture pushes us to that extreme all the time. Our culture says you are valuable because you have skills, and those skills have money associated with them. And when you use those skills productively, now we see your worth, right? Where God says, I saw your worth before any talent you have, before anything you could do. And then accumulation, right? We want comfort. We want all of these things to just sort of make life the best it can be. And it's not bad to be awesome at your job. It's not bad to use some of your income to bless your family or your life, right? But the cultural forces around us, they push us to be a certain kind of person. So resistance is one idea. The next one is rest. In a different way. So for being present all of the week, right? Can we be restful all week long by being restful one day of the week? Reliance, learning to rely on God, a God who cares for us more than our work, and Sabbath forms our identity to do this. A God who says, you know what, I'm here, rely on me, and you know who you are. You know you're loved, you know you're valuable. And then resilience, a life of meaning for the long haul. In other words, what does it mean to be resilient by putting all of life into perspective? Some of us chase more hype in life, right? Like we want every day to be more awesome, more extraordinary, more just exciting. And what Sabbath as a practice can do when you slow down and you set all of it down and you kind of slow your pace, this is what's so cool about Sabbath, is it actually resists the need for each day to be bigger or better or any of those things, because it shows us that the sacred reality already exists in normality. Normality is sacred. Your regular life is sacred space. And so when you pause and you kind of pull away from so-called normal 6 days, you can sort of look at those 6 days with a different lens and say, I like some of this restfulness. I wonder if I can bring that into everywhere I go. And it's okay if I don't get the next opportunity or don't get to do the next thing, because normal life is where God meets me. In the pauses is where God seems to meet me. This week was pretty fun. So we had friends over on Friday night. We kind of had, I kind of paused at that point. And then, as some of you know, the sky got really pretty, right? And Lauren comes to me and goes, hey, I know we've gone many times, because we've gone chasing a lot of times and had marginal success. She goes, I hear it's a really big deal tonight. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I'm tired, I don't know. I'm restful. And then she said, no, you don't understand. And so we went out, and we ended up in Bears Paw, somewhere out in the country at a friend's property, and I'm hoping the picture will come up, but you've probably seen the pictures. Yeah, there they are. Are you kidding me? So we were sitting in this dark space, and we looked around, and maybe some of you know what this was like, but we looked around, and what we thought we were seeing around us was clouds. So I'm looking out the car window, and I say, I don't know if that's clouds after all. And so we almost missed it, and we got out, and we looked up, and it was like a dome just covering the entire half of the sky, this sort of half-dome beauty, right? And here in a space of kind of restfulness, looking up, getting a kink in your neck and not caring, because this is so, so good. You see, Sabbath is like that. It opens us up to wonder and beauty and what could be and the possibilities. And so as we kind of sit with, could Sabbath be something in my life, and could I build margin for that kind of practice? Imagine what it opens up. Imagine what is there that you could be stepping into, and you just don't quite know it yet, because you're in the car and you think it's cloudy, but actually the grandeur of the northern lights and the beauty of God is actually radiating if you just take time to step out of the car and see it. to step out of the normal life and notice God's grandeur and grace and goodness in your life. And so, how do we do this? How do we step into Sabbath? How do we cultivate restfulness in our life? And, as I've said, it's not a requirement. And so I'm going to give you a bunch of options and ideas for considering the practice of it. Some of you, by coming to church on Sunday, you kind of build that out already sort of naturally. Some of us in ministry do the Friday night to Saturday night thing, right? It just depends on your lot in life. Some of you have rotating schedules, and maybe you're going to have to look at your rotating schedule and say, you know what? I'm on these 3 days, I'm off for a day, I'm on for, and kind of say, I think this month I'm going to try to do something to pause on the 27th, right? Or whatever. Because again, our lives are all different. But the first thing you can do, it's very simple, right? Pick a day and time. Pick a day and time and try to just stick to the idea that pausing whatever's going on and stepping into rest and sort of renewal with the people around you is good. Create a ritual or marker for how you start and stop. I've done this in the past. To be honest with you, I haven't practiced it lately. So that's something that challenged me this week. Was as I came to this topic, I was like, you know what? I want to figure out a new way to mark out this period of time when I step in with Jesus in a way that kind of brings meaning and frames the time. Fill that day with life-giving activities, right? Engage in life-giving activities. What gives you joy with others and God? Avoid things that make you less present, such as scrolling. That's a huge one, right? Sometimes it feels like we don't have extra time or we don't have margin, and maybe for some of us it just means taking advantage of the time where we do things that are less helpful and filling it with something more helpful, right? So if the first thing you do, for instance, when you wake up is scroll for 20 minutes, what if you turned on a devotional app for those 20 minutes, right? Like that when people say, I don't have time, we probably have time, we just don't take the time, Same thing with Sabbath. Like what can we kind of put in this space that allows for things, hobbies even, but avoiding those line blurring of recreation and renewal and trying to just get better at noticing that in yourself. You can't commit to 24 hours a week. Adapt it. That's something I want to just be very clear about. Adapt this. Maybe there's 4 hours in a week where you can just go be alone next to a creek, next to the river, and pause and be with Jesus, and that's a Sabbath moment for you. That's good. God will honor that. That's beautiful, right? So figure out what that might look like for you. And here's the biggest one at the end here. Don't over-spiritualize it or turn it into a new legalism. Maybe this goes really well for you because it's like, oh my goodness, I should have been doing this and I could have been doing this and I didn't do this and now I'm doing this. And it's like the heavens open every time I Sabbath and it's the best thing ever and everyone has to do it now. And if you're not doing it, I mean, you're not actually sinning, but you're you don't know, you're not near as close to Jesus as you. Don't do that. Just don't, right? It's not helpful. What's helpful is owning what you've stepped into as sacred and beautiful and helpful and good. And the bonus tip here, prepare for it in advance. What do you have to make sure you've got off the table so that the table is set for rest and renewal instead of, oh, I've got to do this now. This week for me, it was finishing my very late taxes. Yeah, right? So I had those done at 4:30 p.m. on Friday, and they were no longer on my mind for Saturday. So how do we prepare? How do we kind of set ourselves up? So, a couple more thoughts, and we're going to wrap up here. Sabbath and life stage. I'm going to just throw this out there too. Sabbath and life stage is a reality. If you're a teenager to a young adult, I think Sabbath does a lot, but one of the things that it could do is help learn how to declutter your life. Because as a teenager and a young adult, there's always activities that seem to be out there waiting for us, right? There's always things we could do with our time. We're going to go to this kind of thing, or we're going to, all my friends are going to get together this day, just like they did the day before, just like they did the day, and socialize. All that's good. But I wonder if learning the habit of living with less clutter in your life actually would free you to find more in life. People in their career, it's just healthy and holy to turn off work. It's just a good idea. It's just practical wisdom to just turn it off once in a while and to step back and say, I am not what I do. I am who I am because Jesus says so. And just sit in that reality. Parents, if you're a parent in the room, you won't always feel rested when you try to Sabbath, okay? So, when people Sabbath, like even the ancient Jewish people, it's not like they sent their kids to day camp that day. You know what I mean? Being in the Sabbath mode isn't going to be this, it's not going to hit the same as it did when you were a young adult, had work responsibilities maybe, but that was maybe all you had really to really look after. And so taking a trip up to the mountains for 24 hours was practical and peaceful, and solitude happened. If you're in a stage of life where you're caring for little people, here's the deal. It ain't always going to turn out how you want it to, but you should give it a shot. Because there is rest to be experienced in family, in community with your family, right? Like, what can you model about your presence in that pocket of time to your kids that's maybe different than what you tend to model during the rush of the work week and the school week and all the stuff that's going on? There's opportunity there, and it's okay to decide, it's a little clunky, and we don't do it right all the time. Or if you're retired, maybe you're in a stage where you're retired, how does taking 24 hours of Sabbath renew you to offer your time to God's work in your neighborhood, your city, your world, etc.? In other words, if you're retired, I know so many followers of Jesus who are retired, and they say, I'm retired, but I'm using my kind of marginal time that just got really big to step into spaces intentionally, to love well, to be with Jesus, to be with others, right? And I just love that posture. And so even in that stage of life, pausing is good. Pausing is good. And so here's how I want to close. I want to invite us actually to stand, and I'm going to invite the worship team to come up here. And so if you're able to stand, please feel free to stand. And what I want to do is I want to pray with and for all of us. And I know that the idea of taking time, for some of you, you're like, I do this, and I can't not take those pauses. They're just so good. They're so life-giving. For others of you, maybe you don't do it, but you're naturally pretty disciplined as a person, and so you're like, I'm totally going to do that, and you will, and you're going to go for it, right? And then some of you are like, I can't even imagine having the margin for this. Like, how does that even work? And that's okay, too. But right now, we're in a building with stained glass around us across at the front that symbolizes that we are here to rest, to Sabbath, to be present to the God of the universe. And if you've got no other space in your calendar right now where you are in Sabbath, I want to just give us permission right now to take a moment and to sit with Jesus. And if you're not, in a place in your life where you're following Jesus, or you're curious, but you're not sure what this all means, you know what? Here's the truth. The truth is, even science says just simply pausing is good for your brain and your body. And what's so incredible, it's actually a Judeo-Christian idea. We beat the science books. It's pretty cool. And so, friends, if you can take a posture of prayer, of quiet, I invite you to just close your eyes if that's helpful. Can we pause and notice our feet are rooted on the ground? The ground beneath us is solid. It's a rock. It's firm. Because it's Jesus himself. Can we notice the air that we breathe, as bad as it is outside and as moderate as it is inside at the moment? That the fact that we're still breathing is indeed a gift. Jesus, thank you that in the New Testament in Hebrews, you share that we're invited to enter this rest that is possible because you gave your life for us. You rose from the dead and conquered death and evil for us. That even in a broken world, you are reigning and ruling and guiding reality towards its ultimate future, where all things will be reconciled back unto you. And so, Jesus, in this marginal space, would you encourage us to discover other moments of pause, other moments of Sabbath, and the other parts of our week. Thank you that there's no safer place to be than resting with you. We pray all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen.